Have you ever looked at a woman and convinced yourself she wasn't interested, only to discover later that she was waiting for you to make a move? Have you ever replayed a conversation in your head, wondering why she seemed distant, cold, or hard to read? What if I told you that one of the biggest mistakes men make is assuming that a lack of obvious interest means a lack of attraction? Because human psychology doesn't work that way. And female psychology, in particular, is often far more subtle than most men realize. One of the most important truths you will ever understand about human psychology is this: attraction and expression are not the same thing. Most people assume that if someone likes them, it will be obvious. They expect clear signals, immediate enthusiasm, and visible excitement. But real human behavior is rarely that simple. In fact, some of the strongest feelings people experience are often the feelings they hide the most. Think about a moment in your own life when you genuinely cared about someone's opinion. Chances are you became more careful around them, not less. You thought more about what you said. You worried about how you came across. You became aware of the possibility of rejection. The stronger the emotional investment, the greater the emotional risk. This is a universal psychological pattern. Many men make the mistake of interpreting a woman's restraint as a lack of interest. She doesn't text first. She seems reserved. She doesn't immediately reveal her feelings. So the mind jumps to a conclusion. She's not interested. But what if the exact opposite is happening? What if her caution is not evidence of indifference, but evidence that the interaction actually matters to her? Human beings naturally protect what feels emotionally significant. When attraction is present, people often become more self-conscious, more observant, and more cautious about exposing themselves emotionally. A woman may genuinely enjoy your presence while simultaneously questioning whether she can trust her feelings. She may be interested, yet unwilling to reveal that interest too quickly. Not because she is playing games, but because vulnerability carries risk. The deeper psychological reality is that behavior is often filtered through fear, past experiences, social expectations, and emotional self-protection. What you see on the surface is not always a direct reflection of what exists underneath. The people who understand this stop judging attraction by obvious reactions alone. They learn to recognize that human emotions are complex, layered, and often hidden behind a carefully controlled exterior. One of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior is the fear of being misunderstood. Most people go through life believing that others openly express what they feel, but psychology tells a very different story. In reality, people are constantly managing impressions, protecting their image, and carefully deciding how much of themselves they reveal. This is especially true when attraction enters the equation. Imagine a woman who finds a man genuinely interesting. She enjoys talking to him. She looks forward to seeing him. Yet at the same time, another conversation is happening inside her mind. What if she shows too much interest and he loses respect for her? What if she misreads the situation? What if her feelings are stronger than his? Suddenly, a simple attraction becomes an emotional risk. This is where many men become confused. They assume attraction should create openness, but often attraction creates caution. The more emotionally significant someone becomes, the more aware we become of the potential consequences of rejection, embarrassment, or disappointment. Human beings are wired to avoid social pain because, psychologically, social rejection activates many of the same emotional systems associated with physical pain. Think about how often people pretend not to care when they care deeply. They act casual when they're nervous. They appear indifferent when they're emotionally invested. This behavior isn't manipulation, it's protection. It's the mind's attempt to reduce vulnerability before it knows whether it's safe to be vulnerable. A woman may hold back compliments, delay responses, or avoid making her interest obvious, not because attraction is absent, but because uncertainty is present. She may be trying to understand your intentions while simultaneously protecting her own emotions. Her behavior becomes less about what she feels and more about managing how those feelings might affect her. The deeper lesson is this: people are not only responding to you, they are responding to their fears, their past experiences, and the stories they tell themselves about what could happen next. When you understand that, you stop interpreting every reserved behavior as rejection. You begin to see the hidden psychological battle between desire and self-protection that exists beneath the surface of human interaction. One of the deepest truths in human psychology is that emotional openness does not begin with attraction. It begins with safety. This is something many people misunderstand. They assume that if attraction exists, trust will naturally follow. But the human mind is not designed that way. Long before someone allows themselves to become emotionally vulnerable, their brain is unconsciously asking a more important question: am I safe here? Every meaningful human connection is built upon this invisible psychological foundation. Think about how people behave when they enter a new environment. They don't immediately reveal their deepest thoughts, fears, or feelings. They observe, they assess, they gather information. This instinct exists because the human nervous system is constantly scanning for potential emotional threats. It wants reassurance before it allows vulnerability. This is especially true in romantic situations. A woman may feel attracted to a man, enjoy his company, and even think about him when he's not around. Yet attraction alone is often not enough to make her emotionally open. Her mind is still evaluating consistency. Does his behavior match his words? Is he emotionally stable, or does he become unpredictable under pressure? Does he genuinely respect her, or is he simply pursuing validation? These questions may never be spoken aloud, but psychologically they are being asked all the time. Real-life relationships often reveal this pattern. A man may become frustrated because he feels the connection is moving slowly. Meanwhile, the woman is not withholding affection because she lacks interest. She is allowing trust to develop at its natural pace. She is watching whether his actions remain consistent over time. Because from a psychological perspective, consistency creates safety, and safety creates trust. What many people fail to realize is that emotional walls are rarely built to keep good people out. They are often built because of past disappointments, broken trust, or emotional pain. The mind remembers those experiences and becomes cautious, not because it wants to sabotage connection, but because it wants to avoid unnecessary suffering. The people who understand human behavior recognize that emotional openness cannot be forced. It emerges naturally when another person repeatedly demonstrates reliability, patience, and emotional security. Because in the end, attraction may open the door, but safety is what allows someone to finally walk through it. One of the biggest misconceptions about attraction is the belief that people are only evaluating chemistry. Most individuals focus on the immediate feeling, the excitement, the spark, the emotional intensity of a connection. But beneath that conscious experience, something much deeper is happening. The human mind is constantly assessing character. Long before someone fully invests emotionally, they are unconsciously gathering evidence about who you really are. This process happens quietly. A woman may smile, laugh, and enjoy spending time with a man, but at the same time, another part of her mind is observing details that often go unnoticed. How does he react when things don't go his way? How does he treat people when he has nothing to gain from them? Does his confidence remain steady during uncomfortable moments, or does it collapse under pressure? These observations may seem small, but psychologically they carry enormous weight. Human beings evolved to evaluate not only attraction, but reliability. Emotional investment is costly. Trusting the wrong person can lead to disappointment, betrayal, and emotional pain. Because of this, the brain naturally looks beyond appearance, charm, and first impressions. It searches for patterns. It wants to know whether someone's behavior remains consistent across different situations. Think about how often people reveal their true character during moments of frustration, rejection, or uncertainty. A man may appear confident when everything is going well, but what happens when he doesn't receive the response he expected? Does he become angry, defensive, or resentful? Or does he remain calm, respectful, and emotionally grounded? These moments provide powerful psychological information because they reveal what exists beneath the surface. This is why what feels like distance is sometimes observation. A woman may not be deciding whether she likes you. She may already know the answer to that question. Instead, she may be trying to determine whether liking you is emotionally safe, whether your actions match your words, whether your confidence is genuine or fragile, whether your interest comes from authentic connection or the need for validation. The deeper reality is that attraction may capture attention, but character earns trust. And trust is often the deciding factor between a temporary emotional spark and a meaningful connection. The people who understand this stop trying to impress others and start focusing on becoming someone whose actions consistently communicate strength, integrity, and emotional maturity. Because in the end, who you are matters far more than the image you try to project. One of the most fascinating principles in psychology is that people often experience the world not as it is, but as they expect it to be. This is why confidence has such a profound effect on human interaction. Confidence is not merely a personality trait, it is a psychological signal. It communicates how you perceive yourself, and that perception influences how others perceive you. Many men unknowingly enter social situations carrying an expectation of rejection. They may have been disappointed in the past, ignored by someone they liked, or developed internal stories about not being good enough. Over time, these experiences shape their expectations. Before a conversation even begins, they are already anticipating failure. The problem is that the human mind rarely keeps those expectations hidden. They leak into behavior. A man who expects rejection often becomes hyper-focused on every detail. He analyzes every text message, every facial expression, every pause in conversation. He starts seeking reassurance instead of creating connection. He becomes hesitant, overly careful, and emotionally dependent on positive feedback. Ironically, the more desperately he looks for signs of acceptance, the less secure he appears. Psychologists refer to this as a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you expect a negative outcome, your behavior subtly shifts in ways that make that outcome more likely. Not because the outcome was inevitable, but because your actions began serving your fears rather than your intentions. Now compare that to someone who possesses genuine confidence, not arrogance, not emotional detachment, real confidence, the kind that comes from self-respect. This person does not need constant proof that they are valued. They can tolerate uncertainty without panic. They can handle delayed responses without creating worst-case scenarios in their mind. They remain emotionally stable even when outcomes are unclear. And this emotional stability is incredibly powerful because it creates a sense of psychological safety around them. People naturally feel more comfortable around individuals who are comfortable with themselves. Confidence becomes contagious. It reduces tension, lowers defensiveness, and allows authentic connection to emerge. The deeper lesson is that confidence is not about convincing others of your worth. It is about no longer needing constant confirmation of it. When you stop chasing validation, you begin showing up differently. And often, it is that quiet certainty, not looks, not status, not perfect words, that changes the entire dynamic of human attraction. One of the most destructive habits in human psychology is the tendency to mistake assumptions for reality. The mind craves certainty. It wants answers. It wants to know where it stands. And when clear information is unavailable, it does something remarkable. It fills in the blanks. Unfortunately, those blanks are often filled with fear, insecurity, and worst-case scenarios rather than objective truth. Think about how many opportunities in life are lost, not because rejection actually happened, but because someone convinced themselves it had already happened. A woman takes longer than usual to reply to a message, and suddenly the mind creates a story. She's losing interest. She seems distracted during one conversation, and the story grows stronger. She's not attracted to me. She doesn't express herself in the way you expected, and now the conclusion feels certain. She never cared in the first place. But psychology teaches us that perception is heavily influenced by emotional state. When people feel insecure, they tend to interpret ambiguous situations negatively. This cognitive pattern is known as negative interpretation bias. The mind begins searching for evidence that confirms existing fears while ignoring evidence that suggests a different possibility. Real life is filled with examples of this. Someone may be dealing with stress at work, family concerns, emotional exhaustion, or personal challenges that have absolutely nothing to do with attraction. Yet another person interprets every behavioral change as a reflection of their own worth. Suddenly, a situation that required patience becomes a story of rejection. What makes this psychological trap so dangerous is that people often act on the story rather than the reality. They pull away emotionally. They become distant. They stop communicating. They give up before they ever discover the truth. In many cases, the connection doesn't end because attraction disappeared. It ends because assumptions took control. The deeper lesson is that emotional maturity requires the ability to tolerate uncertainty. It means resisting the urge to turn every silence into rejection and every hesitation into disinterest. Human behavior is complex, influenced by countless invisible factors that cannot be understood through a single moment or isolated action. The people who build the strongest relationships are not the ones who constantly search for hidden signs. They are the ones who remain grounded enough to separate facts from fears. Because sometimes the greatest obstacle standing between two people is not a lack of attraction. It is the story one of them created inside their own mind.